Today, we're going to install the Snow water methanol injection system. Now, when you look at these parts, you're going to think that this is really a difficult installation. Actually, it's only going to take about 2.5 hours. We'll take a look at the parts. First of all, included with the kit is a 2-quart reservoir. Next, the 150 psi pump, the digital controller, exhaust probe, and tubing and various other parts. Once again, don't let all of these parts intimidate you. We're going to show you in just a few minutes how really simple it is to install this kit. The next step in the process is to drill the exhaust manifold. We've chosen this location at the back side of the exhaust manifold. We've pre-drilled, and we're ready now to drill with a 7/16 inch bit. We'll start the engine and let it idle while we drill so that any shavings are blown out and that way not get into the turbo. The drilling went exactly as planned. A beautiful hole with the exhaust running. It pushed all of the shavings out so that no shavings whatsoever dropped inside of the exhaust manifold, thus causing perhaps potential damage to the turbo. The next step in the process is to tap the hole. That's done with a 1/4 inch NPT. We will also be putting grease around the outside of that to hold any shavings that might come off of that tapping process. We'll begin then with placing some grease. We're adding grease to the perimeter of the tap so that during the process any shavings adhere to the grease and don't drop into the exhaust manifold. We've just finished tapping the hole. I'm removing the tap now, and you can see that the grease worked exactly as indicated in the instructions, trapping the filings at the very end. We're ready now to install the pyrometer probe. We're going to apply some anti-seize material to the threads. Nice precautionary measure should this need to be removed for servicing or replacement at some future juncture. The next step is the installation of the pyrometer probe. Be very careful so that it doesn't protrude all the way through and touch the opposite side of the manifold. Okay, I can feel it touching. I'm going to back up about 1/4 inch. The next step will be to remove the intake assembly. We'll start by removing the oil dipstick holder. Undo carefully the connections to the intercooler tube and block that inlet as well as the inlet to the engine. After that's removed, we'll drill and install 2 nozzles and also turbo boost. The nozzles must be installed perpendicular to airflow. On this particular application, the 12-valve Cummins, we're going to be drilling on the back side, again perpendicular to the flow of air. We've just finished drilling and tapping each of the holes. In a moment I'll show you the reasoning behind the spacing, which we determined to be 2 inches as a nominal and perhaps appropriate spacing. As a demonstration of why we chose 2-inch spacing, you can see as these nozzle holders rotate, that gives about 1/2 inch of clearance. Now when we put them in their final position, depending upon the location we desire for the tubing, we'll either place them at 90 degrees down or rotate them an additional 180 degrees so the tubing comes from the top. We'll determine that a little later as we install. As you can see also, There is a barbed fitting for the tubing that runs to the boost gauge. The next step is installation of the air inlet. We've determined at this point in the installation to remove the battery in order to gain access to the factory windshield washer reservoir. We're going to remove that, drill it with a 9/16 bit as per the instructions in the guidebook, and then install the nut and assembly to hold the tubing. Wow. We've now completed drilling with a 9/16 bit, have installed using Goop and the special connector assembly, the Quick Connect assembly, and also, as you can see inside, the tubing going down to the bottom of the existing windshield washer reservoir. The next step is to install the 3/8 to 1/8 reducer on the inlet side of the pump. You'll notice if you rotate the pump, there is a directional flow indicator. It might be a little difficult to see in the camera. There's an arrow pointing this direction, an arrow pointing this direction. Thus, this is the inlet side. We'll begin with the inlet side of the pump. We'll apply Goop to the outside threaded area, both to this and the elbow. Tighten hand tight, and then 2 to 3 full rotations past hand tight. Okay, there's hand tight. One full rotation. 1.5. 2. 2.5. 3. Apply Goop to the threads of the elbow prior to installation. Again, tighten hand tight, then 2 to 3 full turns. Threading on very nicely. One rotation, 2 rotations. Now very slowly bringing it in. 3.5. Okay. Repeat these steps for the other side. Very simple procedure once again. Okay. Now, with the pump ready, we're going to find a location underneath to mount the pump. Since we use the current windshield washer reservoir, we want to find a location that is at least as low as the lowest point of the tube or reservoir bottom, or lower, preferably. Okay, we've just put in the very last mounting screw for the pump. We'll look at this just a little bit later as we hook up each of the tubes and also each of the 2 wires. Very nice installation, as you can see. And once again, lower than the lowest point of the windshield washer reservoir. We've installed the tubing on the inlet side of the pump down below and have measured what we need to go into the reservoir, and now we'll cut the tubing. because of the horsepower rating of this 12 valve, since it's been set up with a plate and also injectors, we've determined to install 2 injection nozzles. As you can see, we've connected them with a special T connector, placing in the very center the barbed fitting for the turbo boost line. Next, we're going to connect the tubing from the outlet side of the pump and run it to the injection nozzles on the back of the inlet. Okay. Now that we've run the tubing for the inlet supply to the pump and also from the outlet or pressure side of the pump to the nozzles, we're ready to reinstall the factory windshield washer container. With the windshield washer reservoir now installed, we're ready to connect the supply tubing to the injector nozzles. Fairly simple procedure. After it's inserted the full length, pull backwards just to make sure that it has a good connection. With tubing in place, we are ready to install the variable controller. As you can see, we have a number of wires as well as tube. The instructions are very clear as to the hookup of these wires. We'll demonstrate the process in just a few moments. We're now ready to install a variable controller inside of the cab. We will begin by threading all of the wires and turbo boost tube through the dash and then through an access port in the firewall. With all of the cable and also turbo boost pressure line run through the dash and the firewall, we're now ready to connect to the inlet of the engine. Using the black rubber hose supplied with the kit. Done. We're now ready to install the K connector, yellow wire to the positive, red wire to the negative, which is indicated on the K connector. We've determined also to install the female end of that plug on the computer side. This line is going into the dash to the variable controller, and to have the male portion of this K connector installed on the pyrometer probe side for safety purposes in the event in disconnecting it shorts out against metal, thereby not creating a short or a damage to the variable controller. So now proceed to hook them up. Yellow wire first to positive. You'll notice also as we're doing this that prior to installing these wires, we've inserted the rubber grommet that will go inside of this domed area of the K connector. Now we will install the negative side. Red to negative. Now we're going to replace the cover, grommet in place. We're now going to install the rubber grommet on the lead wire coming from the pyrometer probe. And we'll hook up to the opposite side of the K connector, the male portion of that, just like we did the opposite side. Now, with each of the portions of the K connector correctly installed, we are ready now to connect both sides, positive to positive, negative to negative. Spray pattern is perfect. Okay, we've now connected the turbo boost line to the in-dash controller. We've connected the thermocouple with the K connector, the white wire to the pump red power wire underneath. We've connected the red wire that came from the controller to a keyed source with a 25 amp fuse, and connected the black wire to an excellent ground location, as you can see above. Okay, I'm going to place this on the bottom of the controller first. That way I can position it in the best place possible. Now I'll pull the tab to expose the adhesive. Carefully placing it on the dash, giving firm pressure. Voila.